to another rendition of the Lone Wolf Show. I'm the Lone Wolf, and you're watching Witchcraft TV on Roku Television and also streaming on www.witchcrafttv.online and our online stations and social media profiles and posts and groups and out there on the World Wide Web. And we have a special guest backstage working real hard in our witchcraft and occultic pagan community. And I'm really glad to have him. Without any further ado, we're going to bring him on. His name is Aerik Arkadian. Aerik, how you doing, man? Glad to have you on the Lone Wolf Show.
Hey, Harold. It's good to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I've been following your work for a lot of years. I see you do great things. Always a positive endeavor, with all your streams and things. And I don't even know really where to start. I looked on your private website. You have you had a book coming out. You said it's already on. What's the name of the book? Why did you start writing it? And where can we find it?
So I had a book released in April of this year. It's called Fluid Condensers, Unlocking the Mysteries of Gold, Alchemy, and Magic. It looks like this. And you can get it hopefully from your local bookstore. If not, you can order from my publisher's website, Cross Crow. Or, you can grab it from Amazon if all else fails.
Very cool. So why did you write the book?
Well, I guess it was kind of like a personal journey for me. I happened to come across the mention of fluid condensers several years ago in some occult literature I was reading. And I found the topic really interesting. And the problem I came across when I was trying to learn more about it was that the information was really sparse or just non-existent. So I kind of had to pull from a variety of different resources and come up with my own explanation for things. And as I was putting that material together, some other people said, hey, this is really interesting. This should be a book. So I made it a book.
And, not to be controversial in things, but the use of AI with a lot of our authors, particularly in the pagan community and the old school authors, they do or don't have a problem with the use of AI for editing and things. Did you use AI with any of the editing or research?
So, no. So one thing I appreciate about my Cross Crow contract was that there was a big highlighted statement that said, I'm not going to use AI in producing this book. So they're pretty proud of human authored text and human authored books. Now, we could dive into the AI conversation if you want. I think there are pros and cons, like there are to pretty much anything we're given access to in life. And what it really boils down to is it's a new toy for us. And as the human race, we're kind of acting like children and playing with the toy in a bunch of ways that we probably shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah, we won't waste too much time on the AI conversation. That's a big controversial subject in many different communities. So would you agree that creation is the best magic?
Oh man, magic is creation. Those two are synonyms, right? And you can see that and feel that in just about any creative endeavor, even if you are cooking a meal in the kitchen or if you are performing a concert on a stage. That was the first type of magic that I encountered in life, was performance and music. And when I got into witchcraft later on, which we put the term magic there, that's when we're using the term magic and the witchcraft ritual, I recognized that as a feeling that I had felt before when I was playing music. So it was familiar to me.
In your new book, I did read that the title does have magic in it, and it was spelled with a K. So does that necessarily mean that you are a student or an academically, do you study things with Crowley? Because I'm pretty sure Crowley is the one that put the K on that.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he wanted to differentiate it from stage magic, and I think that is a totally appropriate thing to do. I like to use the K when I'm writing because I think that there is the magic different from how a lot of other people in the mainstream media will use the term. They might be talking about like made up stuff or like stage magic or performance. And what we're doing is more manifestation and energy based and creating reality. So I mean, yeah, I did pick that up from Crowley. I do talk about Crowley a little bit in the book. I quote him probably a couple times. I think he contributed a lot to what we do today.
Absolutely. And not only are you an author, you're also a musician, and you play some really, really cool tunes, that I've been watching for a couple of years now. Did you start your path as like a musician before your earth-based spirituality, or tell me all about that whole path? I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, I would say witchcraft, at least in this life, witchcraft came in adulthood at some point, but music was around since my birth. That was like what I was born into. Everybody in my family played an instrument. My earliest memory is my mom. I'm in a car seat. So, like, this is my earliest memory, right? I'm in a car seat. My mom's driving me somewhere. I don't know where. And she's teaching me how to harmonize with a song that she's singing to me. So it's been around, and I've been in it since as long as I can remember. It was always big in my house. Like, we were always doing something musical, usually for the church. So I sang in the church choir. I played instruments for like the church worship band and stuff like that. And I think that was how I connected to source for the longest time in my life. I mean, it's still how I connect to source, but that was my only way of connecting to source for like maybe the first 20 years of my life. And like I said, when I got into like traditional witchcraft later on, I felt that that was a similar feeling. Playing music and being in ritual were a similar feeling. It's very similar to like if you are improvising with a group of people. That's very similar to like the group mind of ritual and group work and group magic and raising energy together.
Someone in the comments, Shai, said, I love at least the Crowley books. Used to be part of the Thelema RVA, which is now inactive for several years now. Very cool. So tell me about your spirituality. You said traditional witchcraft kind of became infused in your life more into adulthood. Can you tell me about when you first had the realization that the path of the wise was your path?
I think I rejected it for a long time because I was so into the church life for, through my teenage years. And as I got older and I started to think more for myself and not what other people were just telling me, and I was repeating what other people were saying, I started to have issues with some of the things that the church was teaching. And I tried to study other religions and find out, well, what are other people doing? Maybe I'll align with some of that stuff. Witchcraft was the last thing on my mind because it's so ingrained in me for so many years that a witch is the worst thing you can do, right? Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. If you're a witch, you're basically going to hell. And so that was always like a really prevalent fear in my mind. And as much as I could walk away from the church, I couldn't turn that voice off that said, maybe witchcraft is a bad thing. And I struggled with that for a long time. So I went to maybe like the softer side of things. I tried going with some New Age Eastern practices. I started getting heavy into meditation. I liked reading tarot. I got trained as a Reiki master. Like I did all of these things that were almost like as close to witchcraft as I could go without actually calling it witchcraft, right? And at some point, every next step that I wanted to take, it was always leading me to traditional witchcraft or something that was a little bit more scary for me at the time. So I had to really do some personal inventory, and I looked at the things that I believed, and I tried to put them all under one umbrella. So these are things like how do I think the universe works, right? So like reincarnation, energy work, manifestation, stuff like that that I was that I personally felt this fits my model of the universe. And when I put all those things under one umbrella, I basically had Wicca and witchcraft. And I was like, well, all right, I guess I'm going to have to do this. And I originally tried joining like an online coven, like way back in the day when we were doing message boards and stuff like that, as primarily as our form of communication. Now, I'll interject a little bit. I don't want to make this story too terribly long, but as I was trying to engulf myself in different religious beliefs and learn about spirituality and stuff, I didn't really have any limits on I was willing to try to expand my mind. So I did get like heavily into psychedelics, and that kind of devolved into a opiate substance abuse disorder that I struggled with for like a decade. And I moved to Florida as part of my recovery. So when I got to Florida, I went through a like 12-step program, and I did everything I needed to do. And I talked to my sponsor and I said, what do I do now? Like, and he said, well, I don't know. Like, you're kind of pagan. I don't know what pagan people do for their spirituality. So go out and find some pagans and see what they do and you know, do that. So I went on Witchvox and I found a coven, and I gave my story, and I said I was looking for some training, and I got a reply that said, the coven's waiting for you. And that was kind of like the start of my formalized training in witchcraft. And hey, it's been a hell of a ride since then.
Right. Witchvox, that's kind of iconic. Yeah, I wish Witchvox was still around. That's really cool. It's kind of, well, everything ebbs and flows, right? Yeah, that's really cool. That you're part of that history. That's really cool. So you're also a musician, and one of the coolest videos I think that you've ever done, and you know, you're very public. You know, you have a YouTube channel, and please plug in the YouTube channel real quick. What's the name of the YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I've got you can pretty much any social media you can find me at Aerik Arkadian. So my YouTube channel is youtube.com/@Aerik Arkadian, or if you just search for the name of my show, Music, Myth, and Magic, you should probably be able to find all that stuff too. I do interviews kind of in this similar format with people, maybe like once a month, and got a bunch of other videos on cool topics I make up there too. And there's a little bit of my music there too, if you look.
One of the coolest interviews I've seen you have on is with Mr. Christopher Penzak up there in New Hampshire. And I'm from New Hampshire, so I've always been like a fanboy, big fan of his work. Really love his work. He's been around the community a very long time. But the musician part that you did, and it was like an introduction thing, it was with the steel tom drum. When you did that video, like I love the way it plays. I watch it often. I think it's really, really cool. And it kind of has like, you know, I'm not really adept with, you know, Western type of, well, no, I think it's Eastern. Yeah, Eastern. I don't want to get it twisted. But I can see that spirituality pouring out because the steel tom drum comes from more like a Buddhist twist. Is that right?
Well, Yeah, we can say that, okay? But like I think like many things, the history is a little murky. So like, you know how we might also say like a Tibetan singing bowl,
Yeah, that's the right one.
right? So like they're not really from Tibet. Okay? Like this is like marketing terms that have been put on certain instruments to sell them to our culture in the West so that we think that they're like more spiritual. And the origin of a steel tongue drum, if we like really go back, probably descendants of I believe it was an Aztec, slit drum, and they would carve little slots into pieces of wood, and depending on how big the slot was would change the tone when the wood piece was struck. So that's kind of their origin story. But also, since you brought that video up, Harold, have you ever like had something that you made several years ago and then you look back at it and you just kind of cringe a little bit? Has that ever happened to you? Yeah? Okay. So that video I look back at and I cringe because that was the first video that one of the first videos I ever made. And it hurts me a little bit when I go back and watch it, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
So what's up with the part 2? It just sounds like maybe you're more educated with the whole situation. So that part 2 would probably help everyone, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you know, I actually want to put together, because there are some really similar instruments. There's tongue drums, and then there are hand pans, which are really similar, but instead of having like a slot carved to change the pitch, they have like an indentation in the side of the metal. And that, you know, you have all these indentations around. It's kind of like a steel drum, if you're familiar with the inside of those instruments. But I've been considering making a video comparing the two and kind of showing off a little bit more information, because I think a lot of people, they get a little confused between the two sometimes, especially if it's not really a topic you've jumped into before.
It's really cool that you talked about how they use those particular instruments to market to spiritual communities for, you know, like healing and stuff like that. What do you feel like one of the most potent instruments are used in contemporary times for healing?
The most potent instrument for healing or any other form of magic or energy work, in my opinion, I would say is the voice.
The voice.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we underestimate the power of our voice. And that's, I like to say it's the magical tool you always have with you. Because that's kind of like the basis of so much magic and ritual that we do. It starts with the spoken word. It's the words of the ritual. It's the words of the spell. It's the vibration to connect with source, or to express the energy that you need to put out in the world. And there's a lot of power behind our words, and our words are all vibration and intonation, and there's some secret mysteries behind all of that, I think, if you take some time and think about it.
So I see you as like an upcoming leader in our community, and I just use my own discernment because I interview like tons of people, and you do too. But I see you out here, you know, particularly like in media and things. Do you have students? Do you have people that reach out to you that you train now since you've been walking the path?
Well, I mean, thank you. That's a very nice thing to say. we, we do have students. My wife and I run a coven. So, I mean, that was a commitment that we wanted to make, not for any other reason other than, we'll say, preserving the craft, right? Like, our spiritual work that we have done through traditional witchcraft has done a lot for us, has benefited our lives, has made us better people. And running a coven is kind of, at least I see it as a way I can give back to the craft that has done so much for me. So we do have students, but that's not like, you can't join online. We have local students, like people that we have taught and been working with for years now. At this point, it's not like I don't publicly advertise the coven side of things, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not looking to pip request.
Right. That makes sense to me. The craft was never meant for like proselytation type of scenario. So that does make a lot of sense. Absolutely. So how long have you been on the path of the wise, so to speak?
I think when I started to transition out of the church was around 18, probably around 18. And by the time I had by the time I had accepted the label of witchcraft as something that I was more comfortable with saying, it was sometime in my early 20s. So, I mean, by comparison to others, it's not the longest time. I'm in my 30s now, but you know, it's been long enough for me to pick up a few cool things.
Well, you was exposed to and worked with Witchvox, and there's a lot of jitterbugs out there, or people that are younger that have never heard of Witchvox at all and never get to experience that kind of thing. So I think that a lot of your insights are very valuable, especially with the expansion and explosion of, you know, what social media is. And although, you know, your coven is not, you know, proselytized, which is a good thing, and I think lacks a lot in the community. But for educational purposes and for the narrative and documentation for, you know, Witchcraft TV, because I love documenting contemporary witchcraft, and that's kind of our mission. What would be your advice to, you know, the younger you or the younger seeker? What would be your number one advice to them?
The younger me or the younger seeker? Man, I think there are probably a lot of things that I would go back in time and tell to my younger self. But one thing that I try to instill in people, and I think this is something that my wife and I teach a lot in our coven, is the idea that it is okay to come up with your own meaning for things. And so I think, like, to relate it to myself, right? When I was first getting into religion, everything had to be what was written in a book. If it didn't come from the Bible, it was not valid. And I think that was a mentality that I had starting out in witchcraft. And I was always looking for, okay, I think this is the way something is, but I need to find a book that says this so I can be sure. Because I was looking to back up my beliefs with something that was written. And then it took me a long time to, like, become accepting of my own personal gnosis and my own understanding of things. And you'll see it. I encountered this a lot when I was writing about fluid condensers, because as I mentioned earlier, there's not a lot that is written. And so when I was writing about it and explaining how they work, I was not always able to cite a reference. And so I had to put my own interpretation of things out there. And that was scary for me because I couldn't back it up with something that someone else had written. But I discovered that that is a totally valid practice and that is completely an okay thing to do. So just to kind of like tone that down a little bit, because not everybody's writing a book, but maybe you're doing a spell with color magic, and maybe you have looked at a correspondence chart of what red means, and red is passion, and red is love, but red is strawberries to you in that moment, and it means summer and happiness, and like that's how you want to use it in your spell, and that's totally fine, because the personal connections and that intuitive link that you have towards concepts, that is completely valid, and in many respects it might even be more powerful than what you read in a book because it's coming from inside you. So that like personal, practical, lived experience rather than just read from a book somewhere. And I'm not saying books aren't valuable, because they totally are. They give us a basis for where to start a lot of times with our personal experience. But that would probably be some advice that I give to myself or to a newer seeker, is that just kind of do you and try things out your way. You're not going to get hurt. The worst thing that's going to happen is probably like maybe your magic is a little less effective, but you might also stumble across some ways that it's way more effective for you.
My next question is kind of controversial, but it's definitely appropriate, and it has a twist of like hermetics and the Emerald Tablet and things. But I asked this to a lot of people that I interview because, well, I like different perspectives of different witches. And the question is, did humanity create the gods, or did the gods create humanity?
Well, I mean, that is the type of thing that I will think about late at night and lie awake in bed wondering, did we create the gods? Are we the gods, or did the gods create us? And I don't really think one created the other. I think we both are. Does that make sense? We both have been. We both are.
You asked me if it made sense. The only thing that comes to mind is that everything is true in one sense, false in one sense, yet everything is permissible. That's what pops in my head. Something that stuck with me for a long time. So yeah, just like asking different opinions from different practitioners. So yeah, very cool. So yeah, we only have a little bit more time left, but yeah, please plug in your book. Again, where can we find it? The publish that you can find it, how to find it.
Yeah, so again, this is my recent release, Fluid Condensers, Unlocking the Mysteries of Gold, Alchemy, and Magic. You can grab it at your local bookstore. If they don't carry it, go tell them to pick it up from Crosscrow. You can get it from Crosscrow's website. Or if you hop on Amazon, you can grab it from them as well. I think it's on sale right now. It's like 20% off too. So this is a good time to grab it.
And you're also a musician. Is your music actually streaming on like Pandora and iTunes and things, or is it kind of a more
No, it is. You can find me on Spotify, on iTunes, or Apple Music, Amazon Music, like pretty much all the major streaming platforms. If you type in my name, you'll find a couple of my albums and some of my music there.
I'm a big fan of your rendition of I.A.O. Pan. Big fan of that. You did a great job.
Thank you.
On the
Thank
sixth.
you.
I think it was an electric. You did a really good job on that. I really enjoy that. It's really cool.
I've got plans to record like a full studio band version of that song at some point. So that'll be fun.
All right, Mr. Arkadian himself, thank you so much for coming on the Lone Wolf Show. Can you leave us with a short brief of some words of wisdom?
Man, I wasn't prepared for dropping a short sentence of wisdom. Don't let your fear hold you back in your practice. You know, just if you want to do a thing, if you're interested in a thing, just go ahead and do the thing. You're going to learn something from it.
Aerik Arkadian right here on Witchcraft TV on Roku Television. Thank you so much for coming on. Make sure you check out his books on Amazon and also his music streaming right now on Spotify. It's Mary Part for now. Until next time, thank you, Aerik.
Thank you.